So let's just have a look at these areas. So the first area is physical. I've classed it as a physical area, and what we have in that is people and manage expectations, which is what's just been said by Christian there. So let's just talk about people distractions for a moment, okay? This is actually probably harder in the workplace when people are just walking into your office or walking up to you, or have you got a sec? And that sec really means about 10 minutes, doesn't it? Yeah, so time stealers and all that type of stuff. People, managing expectations. I've had to do this again recently with my guys, with my team. My team were furloughed for a few weeks during lockdown. I had the office and the studio to myself. I got loads of work done in that period of time because there was very little distraction. And then I unfurloughed my team and they came back into the office, and all of a sudden I got to the end of one day and I'd done loads of work for other people and very little for myself. And I had sorted this out years ago with my team, but I'd forgotten it because they'd gone away for lockdown and then came back. So I had to reset expectations. So there's 3 guys in my office today. If I walk in, which I will when I've done this session and after I've done the one this morning, I'll guarantee you they'll all want something from me, okay? I also know that I've got several things on my task list for today that needs to be done. So because of that, this morning, before anybody got in, I set out the urgency of my tasks for the day in my list, which I'm going to share my technique with you in the next learning point or the one after, okay? It's called the Franklin Covey system. I know I've shared it with a couple of you guys. I think Darren is using this now, and so on and so on. So now when I go across to my office from the studio and they go, I need this, I need this, I need this, before I've sat down, I'm actually going to acknowledge all of their needs, which is what Pete's point that he made there. But I've also got a time slot in my head of when they can talk to me. And I know you might think that's quite anal, but I've got certain things that need to be out by the end of the day. I've got my month-end accounts and it's pretty nearly year-end accounts that are coming up. So there's certain things I need to get done and get signed off by the end of play today. So I'll go in and I'll go, they'll go, need this, need this. I'll go, yeah, no problem. Okay, I'll tell you what, I can do those 2 together and I can do that one separately. But you're going to have 1 o'clock and you need to have 3 o'clock. I can't do 3 o'clock, okay? Or when can you do? 3:30? 3:30 is fine, no problem, happy days, okay? So what I am doing is I am managing those expectations up front, okay? I am managing. And I know this is a little bit more challenging in a larger business. I've worked in a big corporate, you know, I've been a regional director, 300 emails a day coming in, looking after 300 branches of retail service shops, and so on and so on. So I know things can get thrown at us and so on. And if it's business critical, and if it's health and safety critical, then it's probably more important than what's on your list anyway. So you need to go and deal with it. Otherwise, the best thing you can do is to try and manage expectations. The more you manage expectations, the more people understand you're going to manage their expectations. So when this started happening to me years ago, when I built a team, what I was finding was I was getting nothing done when the office was full. And I'd rather work at home because I'd get more done. But then again, that's not why I had an office and it's not why I had a team. So I started to manage people's expectations, and when they'd say, I need you, I'd say, okay, what's it for? Great, okay, fine, no problem, let's book a time in this afternoon, rather than going, okay, I'll do that for you now. Because if you keep going, I'll do it for you now, that's what people expect from you, that's what people demand from you at that point. And over time, this is before lockdown, over time with me doing that, I started to educate the people around me. And I know you might be saying, yes, but John, you're the boss. Yeah, but you can do this when you're not the boss, but you just have to start educating people around you. Pete kind of leaned over and I said, we're due to meet Pete, and he went, not now, John. And that was okay, so I was kind of fine, no problem. However, I needed to speak to Pete within the next couple of days. It was about something, you know, it wasn't urgent, but I still urgent-ish. So I came away. And then, it trickled down. I think there'd been an incident with a machine somewhere, and you were all dealing with it, and so on and so on and so on. And then I saw Pete in a corridor later that day, and I thought, well, I don't want to steal Pete's time because I'm conscious of that. So that's about the culture. So I said to Pete, I know you've got a lot going off today. Am I important enough for you to speak to me? And Pete very nicely smiled and went, no, John. Not today. And I went, no problem, Pete. When would be useful? And Pete went, give us a bell tomorrow morning, we'll pick up then. Great. Happy days. I gave him a bell the next day, sorted it, job done, moved on. But that's about people thinking for themselves, and it's about he still resets it for me. Quite sure what you mean now, Pete. He still resets it for me. Oh, resents it. So is that resents? Sorry. Resents it for me. I don't resent it at all, Pete. In fact, I've used it a couple of times as a great example of actually, sometimes there's more important stuff, isn't there? Pete, he brings it up in almost every session. Now you're making fun. I do not bring it up in every session, yeah? But it's a great example of where you've got to go, hang on a minute. You can't just steal people's time sometimes. It doesn't work that way. Yeah? So let's manage expectations from people around us. We have to start managing it ourselves. So we have to start educating people. They can't just come to us and we'll drop everything and off we go, unless it's business or health and safety critical. Absolutely. But once we start managing people, we can start using that language with them, just like I did with Pete. Fine, Pete, when would be good? When can it fit in? Yeah, likewise, the other way around as well. So we can't always fit everything in. So my team, they've got a list of stuff ready for me when I go back there. I know because I've just popped across and I can see them prepping it. My job is to go back and go, right, have you got anything business critical? No? Okay, in that case, I'll speak to you and you can have 20 minutes at 2 o'clock and you can have 20 minutes at 3 o'clock. Because I've got something I need to do when I go back. Okay, unless it's business or health and safety critical. Okay, so the first one is people, and I was quite happy to see first one out was people, biggest distraction. Okay, the next one is mental. Okay, mental thoughts in your head, distractions in your head. Okay, one of my old bosses when I was a junior manager, I was an assistant manager in a bowling alley. I was very, very junior. And one of the general managers that I worked for, he had a notebook that he didn't ever put down. He never put down. And I used to think to him, and I said to him, I said, why do you carry this notebook around with you all the time? And he went, because I lose thoughts, they distract me. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, if I'm in the middle of doing something or I'm talking to somebody and I think of something else, I need to write it down so I don't forget it. But it means that I can then park it and concentrate on what I'm doing. Okay, and that's why, and from that moment on, and it's even easier these days because in those days, you couldn't put notes on your phone, you couldn't write them physically on an iPad, and so on and so on and so on. But it's very, very good little technique because our own thoughts can distract us away from what we're doing. By writing a thought down, you drop it out of the brain. It's like a hopper. So you have an idea, you write it down, and you leave space then for either another idea or to go back and focus on what you were focusing on. But by writing it down, psychologically you remove it. It goes out of your brain. Okay, so that's quite a nice little tip for you to take away there. Have, your phone, make a note on it, or, have a notebook with you if you still like pen and paper or whatever it may be. I take my iPad everywhere with me. It's got, me notes in it and me jobs in it, and, I've got a page for client notes, a page for prospect notes, me personal tasks, me work tasks. It's all on there so I can just get stuff down so I can focus on what I'm doing. Because remember, this is all about not multitasking. And when you're thinking about 5 or 6 other things that are cognitive, important things that take brain power, it's distracting you from what you're trying to do in the first place. Aaron's just put, when we're chasing the client for info, data, etc., first question is always, is now a good time? If you get a yes, then crack on. If no, then you set a time that suits them to talk. Client is then already agreeing to talk, sets time aside, and is ready to communicate, setting expectations from the outset. Absolutely, Aaron. I really like that approach. The only thing that I would tweak on that, Aaron, is now a good time as a closed question. So if you caught somebody in a bad mood that was very stressed, and is now a good time, and they went no, and even if you followed up with when would be a good time, they could go, I don't know. Yeah, so maybe just have a think about that, and maybe say something like, let me just think about this, rather than is now a good time, maybe say something like, I'm calling now, I'm assuming this is a good time, if not, when would be? So you almost want to, a little bit of sales psychology in there as well. You almost want to not let them say no. No is quite a definite answer to things. It closes the brain down. Yeah? So you could just say, obviously, I'm assuming now's quite a good time to chat about that. If not, when would be? So you're getting rid of them saying no, and you're getting them straight to the when would be. Does that make sense? And I know it sounds like I'm being a bit pedantic with language, but I think there's a little bit of coaching and sales psychology in there as well. But to be fair, you're at least getting the right time to speak to people, if that makes sense. Hopefully that's been a little bit useful anyway, Aaron. I think what you're doing is very, very good. I think just tweak that psychology a little bit. But at least you're managing expectations, which is great, which is very, very good. Yeah. Okay, so remove thoughts, write them down, get them out, get them away, so you're focusing on what you're focusing on. And then finally, technology. Okay, so in the past you had physical and mental distractions, and now we have technological distractions. Alerts, alarms, and Outlook. Okay? How many people probably have alerts, alarms, Outlook, things beeping off every 5 minutes, and so on and so on and so on. Technology is great for what we want to use it for. We've used it for video conferencing and lockdown and all this type of stuff. We can email people, we can message people, we can do all this great stuff. However, it can be a one major pain in the rear distraction. Technology can be. So what I've started doing now is, in fact, on my phone and laptop, my emails only come through when I ask them to. Okay, so if people of my age and older can remember the times where you had to actually press send and receive to get an email. They didn't just come through automatically, and then all of a sudden we had push emails that came through, so you'd now just get them. I don't. It doesn't mean that I don't check my emails 3 or 4 times a day, sometimes more, but I check them when I am not focused on something else that's in there. And some of you might be going, oh my God, yeah, but what happens if you miss an urgent email? If it's that urgent, somebody will pick the phone up to you, and they'll be calling you, and you might want to take that call if it's an urgent thing, for argument's sake, okay? But when it comes to emails, those little emails popping through, they can be such a distraction. Remember, you're in the middle of concentrating on something, and then you hear a ping. You take your eyes away, you look at the 3 or 4 lines that you've got in the little box of the email, and you think, oh God, right, let's just sort that quickly, and then it's off my plate. By the time you've done that, you've lost your productivity over here, and it's going to take you up to 25 minutes getting back to the same level of productivity.